On this edition for Saturday, May 12th, Iraqis go to the polls for the first time since the defeat of ISIS. In our signature segment, mothers raising their babies while doing time in prison. And what's behind the decision of music streaming services to stop hate content? Next on PBS NewsHour Weekend.
From the Tisch WNET studios at Lincoln Center in New York, Hari Srinivasan.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. With the U.S.-North Korea summit now set for June 12th in Singapore, North Korea says it will destroy an underground nuclear test site less than 2 weeks from now and will invite journalists as witnesses. North Korea's foreign ministry said tunnels at the site will be blown up sometime between May 23rd and 25th, depending on weather conditions. Research facilities will also be destroyed. North Korea said it would invite and escort journalists from 5 countries, the United States, South Korea, China, Russia, and Britain, to cover the event. There was no mention of allowing weapons inspectors or nuclear experts at the site. President Trump's lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, is walking back his statement that the president, quote, denied the merger of AT&T and Time Warner. This morning, CNN reported that Giuliani now says that the president didn't interfere in the proposed $85 billion merger. In an interview yesterday with the Huffington Post that focused on payments the president's longtime personal lawyer Michael Cohen received from corporations including AT&T, Giuliani said the president denied the merger. They didn't get the result they wanted. Cohen received $600,000 from AT&T for advice, a payment AT&T CEO called a big mistake. Oklahoma Governor Mary Fallin, a Republican, vetoed a controversial gun rights bill late last night and signed another on faith-based adoption services. Fallin vetoed a bill that would have allowed adults to carry firearms without a permit or training, angering the National Rifle Association, but pleasing the State Bureau of Investigation. The governor signed a law that protects faith-based organizations that refuse to place children in LGBTQ homes. Freedom Oklahoma, an LGBTQ rights group, is threatening to sue the state over the measure. The Kilauea volcano on Hawaii's Big Island is still erupting, and now there are new concerns about what comes next. Scientists are warning that lava levels inside the volcano may drop below the water table, which could create a volcanic steam-driven eruption. Hawaii civil defense officials say that could send boulders as large as refrigerators half a mile into the air, along with 20,000-foot ash plumes. The Hawaii National Guard says it is prepared to rescue some 2,000 people by convoy, troop vehicles, or helicopter. Iraq held a national election today, the first since Prime Minister Haider al-Abadi declared victory over the Islamic State in December. Results are expected within the next 2 days, but it will likely be months before a prime minister is chosen and a new government is formed. For some analysis of what's at stake, I'm joined via Skype from Baghdad by New York Times bureau chief Margaret Coker. Thanks for joining us. So the good news is that we haven't seen any widespread violence or attacks. That was something the country was concerned about for today.
Right. It's a pretty amazing, actually. In 2014, a third of the nation had been overrun by Islamic State. People were talking about the end of Iraq. And now we've had a national election, almost no violence, a few irregularities, but people were pretty free to come and vote as they chose.
What did you or your reporters see out at the polling stations today?
Well, I was in Baghdad. I went around this big capital city to 5 or 6 different polling stations in different parts of the city. And turnout was very low. You know, there's a general mood here of just utter exhaustion. There was enormous amount of battles, a lot of sacrifice, a lot of lives lost over the last 3.5 years. People are exhausted. And security is so good now that everyone is concerned again with quality of life issues, a lack of infrastructure, a lack of schools, a lack of jobs. And so you have all of these routine problems that appear overwhelming, but also there's a lack of trust in the political leadership about how these things can get solved. So the mood on the street is pretty subdued.
Well, let's talk a little bit about kind of the bigger picture, things that are happening in the background here. But what is the role of perhaps Iran in the influence that Iran wields in Iraq right now, or how long the United States will stay in Iraq and kind of what capacity?
Yeah, so one of the amazing things about last fall and into the winter when Iraq declared victory over Islamic State, there's this tremendous surge of patriotism and nationalism. People are proud again to be Iraqis. And there's quite a lot of breathing space right now for Iraqi nationalists to come to the fore. I mean, people who either pulled one way towards Iran or pulled one way towards America 10 years ago are now trying to reposition themselves politically as being nationalists first and in the middle of the political spectrum. And there's a very, very strong sense among the Iraqi population that sectarianism, which they blame a lot for all of the bloodshed that has befallen Iraq over the last decade, they say that the era of sectarianism is over. And so what that means in a coded fashion is that political parties that look too close to Iran or too close to any other of the regional powers, they're not going to do well in these polls.
All right, Margaret Coker, New York Times bureau chief, joining us via Skype from Baghdad tonight. Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
When a pregnant woman goes to prison, most often she has to give up her baby to a relative or another caregiver until she finishes serving her sentence. Tonight, in the first of a two-part report about children whose parents are incarcerated, NewsHour Weekend's Megan Thompson has the story of an innovative prison program that allows mother and child to stay together behind bars.
Brenda Singer is serving 2 years at the Indiana Women's Prison in Indianapolis for opioid possession and failing to show up at a work release program. When she arrived here in January, she was almost 9 months pregnant. It meant she'd give birth behind bars and possibly be separated from her baby just hours later.
I was scared. I was really worried. I would have had a little under 24 hours with her, but that would have been just like having her and pushing her away.
But that's not what happened. 2 weeks after getting here, Singer gave birth to her daughter Doris. Little Doris now lives here in the prison with her mother in a special unit called the Wee Ones Nursery.
She's amazing. First smile breaks your heart. Just melt, you know.
And you got to see it.
Yeah, thanks to Wee Ones.
So today Doris has an appointment at 9 a.m. Okay. Just want to go over everything. As far
Leah Hessian is the nursery's director.
Wee Ones was started in April of 2008 as a way for pregnant low-level offenders to be able to keep their children after delivery while the mother's still incarcerated.
The United States puts more females in prison than any other country in the world, and the majority of incarcerated women are mothers. But prison nurseries are rare. There are only 8 in the country.
For some people watching this, it might be a little bit surprising to see babies in a prison. Is it good for a baby to be living in a prison?
I think so. These are infants. These are babies who are months old, who just want to be held and nursed and loved by their mothers. And that's what we're able to provide in a safe environment.
The nursery is housed in its own dormitory, where mothers live separated from the nearly 600 other prisoners.
So this is one of our mothers' rooms. You'll notice that it only has one bed. A typical offender room is going to have a bunk bed, so it'll be 2 offenders to a room. With our mother's room, we only have 1 bed and room for the crib, so that gives the mother and child time to bond.
When we visited, there were 4 babies in the nursery. There's room for up to 10. Pregnant prisoners can live here too.
Over here, this is also a nursery. This nursery does have a television in it. It's got 2 of the electric swings, so it's a little more popular. So this here is our supply closet.
Officials say the Wee Ones Nursery is funded entirely by private donations and grants, including all the diapers and wipes.
We have 2 closets. We have a boys' closet and a girls' closet.
Same goes for the baby clothes. Most of them are donated and then reused.
The mothers are able to come and exchange clothes every other week just as their child grows so much in the first year.
To live here, women must be low-level offenders with 0 history of violence, and their sentences must be relatively short, so they'll be released by the time their child turns 2.
I got some women who need to go.
The stakes are high. If they break the rules, they could get kicked out.
We have expectations from room inspections to classes and things like that she must complete. She's got to have a positive attitude and a willingness to change her life.
I hate being on drugs. I hate that life, but I can't let it hold on to me because I'm ready to move forward. I'm ready to be a better person. I'm ready to be a better mom, more than anything.
What is that?
28-year-old Jamie Beam has battled addiction since she was 14 years old. She says her drug of choice is methamphetamine. She was convicted last year of burglary and of illegal possession of a firearm. When she was locked up last summer, she was about 5 months pregnant.
I didn't know where we would be. I didn't know what would happen, who she'd be with. I didn't have any answers, and I was very scared.
There you go. Her all better now.
Chloe was born in December.
She is such a happy baby. She's full of smiles, just very happy. And I'm so glad that I didn't have to miss out on that.
Beam has raised 2 other young daughters who are now living with their dad in Michigan. In here, sober, Beam feels she's able to focus more on Chloe than she was with her other children.
Oh, I don't mind, honey bunny.
I noticed a lot more parenting, things than I did with my other girls, just because being on the outside, there's distractions, there's coming and going, versus me and Chloe where it's just like one-on-one all the time, every day.
Each day's real nice.
Be able to show her she's got a mom who loves her and is going to take care of her and be there for her. I don't know if later in the future, if we didn't have this bond, where our relationship would be, because I feel like that bond is going to be how her whole life might turn out. Sounds crazy, but yeah.
Angela Tomlin says that's not crazy at all. She's a psychologist and expert in early childhood development at the Indiana University School of Medicine.
It's really important for kids to have that early attachment to their parents.
Tomlin notes that the brains of infants are still developing, and babies need certain social experiences to help their brains form.
And that social experience that is most important is that relationship with the parent. So we need over and over again, day to day, moment by moment, experiences of having the parent see the baby, understand the baby's need, and fulfill it over time. And what we understand that happens through that process is that the child comes to know in like a real way that they are psychologically and physically safe. And that sense of safety or trust is what we think of when we think of as a secure attachment. That secure attachment has so many benefits down the road. Doing well in school, getting along with other people, and really growing up to be a sensitive parent themselves.
Researchers at Columbia University compared babies who lived in prison nurseries to those raised by mothers outside with similar risk factors like drug addiction. They found that a larger number of the prison nursery babies developed secure attachments. Another Columbia study found these children were less anxious and less depressed once they got to preschool compared to babies who'd been separated from their incarcerated moms. And most children are separated. All the moms in the Wee Ones nursery and most of the other inmates here have older kids they had to leave behind.
Anytime a child is separated from their parent, that has the potential to be experienced as a trauma.
Tomlin says it can be especially traumatic for children when a mother goes to prison because she's usually the primary caregiver.
So if dad goes to prison, mom often is still there for the child. When mom goes to prison, a lot of times it's not the dad who's available to take care of the child. It may be another family member. The child may be in a foster care situation.
While kids can develop secure attachments to other caregivers like grandparents, regular visits to their mothers in prison can help too.
Every time he comes down here, that's what he wants is the dinosaurs.
The Indiana Women's Prison Family Preservation Program has a huge play area where visiting kids can run free.
I personally pretty much just pretend like it's home. I only have one sister.
Jessica Inholt didn't qualify for the Wee Ones nursery because her sentence for dealing heroin was too long. But her mom faithfully brings her 2-year-old son, Trip, to visit every weekend.
There we go. I set snacks out for him and make sure he's not going to hurt himself playing around. Being a first-time mom and being in prison, I just try and do the best that I can to learn how to be a mom while I'm here.
Playrooms like this one go a long way towards helping moms develop and maintain relationships with their children, says Angela Tomlin, especially compared to typical prison visiting rooms where prisoners often can't hold their children or even might be sitting behind glass.
The child needs to see the parent as a caregiver. So we need an environment where the child can behave in a typical way and the parent can have opportunity to respond to the child in a typical way.
Hi, baby.
Back in the Wee Ones nursery, Brenda Singer stays in touch with her 5 other children with phone calls. Most of them live in Ohio, too far away for regular visits.
Oh, you got a bellyache.
Singer, who's been incarcerated at least 4 times before, tries to call every day.
I hope you feel better.
I do worry about them having trust with me. My oldest daughters, I had quite a bit of confrontation with them because they just felt like, we're tired, Mom. So either get it right this time, or you're not gonna be my mom. Pretty much is how I got it. So it hurts them. Not only do we do time, but they do. So we let them down. I let them down, I should say.
Doing time in the nursery is supposed to give moms the chance to turn things around, and proponents of this program say it can help make that happen. A 2013 study by the University of Indianapolis followed women who spent time in the Wee Ones nursery. Compared to women separated from their babies, they were about half as likely to return to prison within their first year of release. To make sure the new moms can go to therapy and classes, there's childcare provided by other low-level offenders who live on the unit too. While her baby's looked after, Jamie Beam attends a Cocaine Anonymous group, a 12-step program, and culinary arts classes. The prison also offers prenatal, postnatal, and parenting classes.
Because I feel like if I weren't to be with her, I'd probably not be able to work on myself as quick as I have been. Just because I feel like I would be missing a very important time of Chloe's life.
Brenda Singer is going through a rehabilitation program here too.
You've been incarcerated before.
Right.
Is there something about this time, this place, this stay that means you're going to turn it around?
Oh yeah. I missed a lot. I'm gonna miss my grandson's birth, and that tears me up. But I made those choices. So if this wasn't a smack in the face, I don't know what would be.
When Doris is older, when she's grown up, what are you gonna tell her about this chapter of her life?
That mom learned a lot just by having her with me. She's my coach. As I call her, she's my boss right now. And it's great because I need that. I need that mentally to be fixated on what's important. And it's not about the drugs, it's not about pills or, rolling the next blunt or drinking my next drink. It's about Doris at the end of the day. And all day, it's about her. So I think that's mentally making me fit, for the outside.
This week, the music streaming service Spotify removed R&B singer R. Kelly from its playlists, which means fewer listeners will discover or hear his music. Why R. Kelly? In part because of the online campaign #MuteRKelly. There are demands for investigations into allegations he abused women of color over the past 20 years. Kelly performed last night in North Carolina. The singer is not currently charged with any crimes. Spotify cited its new hate content and hateful conduct policy as justification. And other streaming services have also removed R. Kelly from playlists, although his music is still available on these platforms. Joining me now is Joan Salzman, senior reporter for CNET, who is following this issue. This isn't necessarily a conversation about R. Kelly, but really about the step that Spotify has taken. What makes this such a big deal?
Well, for one, Spotify is the biggest streaming music service at a time when music streaming is becoming the most popular, most common way that people are listening to music. So it's a stake in the ground, a very definitive step that it will make editorial judgments about not only the content of music, but the conduct of the artist itself. And those judgments can have real repercussions on artists' livelihood.
There's a part of their policy that I want to pull out. It says, what about hateful conduct by an artist? It says, we don't censor content because of an artist or creator's behavior, but we want our editorial decisions, what we choose to program, to reflect our values. When an artist or creator does something that's especially harmful or hateful, for example, violence against children and sexual violence, it may affect the ways we work with or support that artist or creator. That's a portion of this conduct policy that they changed. That seems well and good, but what is the threshold for when it's determined that someone actually did something? If he hasn't been convicted of a crime, usually you can say, well, this is a criminal conviction. A jury of your peers have found that you did this wrong. This isn't that.
Exactly. That's why it's interesting. R. Kelly hasn't had a criminal conviction. He's not charged with anything right now. And there's another artist that they have also said at the same time that they're not going to be promoting. He hasn't been convicted of any crime either. So what it does, even though it makes a firm stake in the ground that Spotify is willing to exert this editorial judgment, it muddies the waters about what that judgment is and how they're going to be applying it.
And what kind of revenue are we talking about when, I mean, on the one hand, artists always complain that they're getting such little money from royalty, but if you're not somebody who's like R. Kelly and who's still touring, how much does Spotify actually end up helping your music?
Spotify is not critical, but it's a crucial element to an artist's livelihood, especially as consumption of music migrates over to streaming rather than getting an iTunes download or buying a CD. Touring, of course, is a giant element to help how artists make money, but that recurring revenue comes from more often streaming. And in the case of Spotify, it's the biggest streaming subscription service. And its subscriptions pay a lot better than if you were to stream an R. Kelly song on YouTube and just watch the video, but listen to the song. That pays a lot less than what you would get paid as an artist if a subscriber listens to your music.
There's a long list of artists whose behavior we have either tolerated or set aside to enjoy their music, right? So what is the kind of, how far back do they go? Now, is Spotify willing to put all of these different artists and all of that music off of their playlists if that's the step that they're willing to take?
These popular playlists, they can make and break artists. And so if Spotify is going to use conduct as a decision-making tool in whether or not they want to promote an artist, then it raises questions about, will the artists that become huge be different? Will we have different art because of these decisions?
All right, these are all important questions. Joan Salzman from CNET, thanks so much for joining us. For a longer conversation on music streaming services and hate content, visit our Facebook page at facebook.com/newshour.
This is PBS NewsHour Weekend, Saturday.
A British-based human rights group says the Israeli airstrikes on military targets in Syria this week killed 42 people, including 19 Iranians. Israel said it attacked suspected Iranian military outposts in Syria in response to what they say was a barrage of Iranian rockets launched into the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights the day before. German Chancellor Angela Merkel visited the Basilica of St. Francis in Assisi, Italy today, where she received the Franciscan Order's Lamp of Peace for her work protecting Syrian war refugees. Chancellor Merkel called the civil war in Syria one of the greatest humanitarian crises of our time and called on the international community to help end the war. She said President Trump's decision to pull out of the Iran nuclear deal makes the Middle East situation even more difficult. In Yemen, officials say at least 115 people were killed over 2 days of fighting this week in the western part of the country. At least 5 civilians were killed by missile strikes in the northwestern city of Sada on Thursday. This came a day after the Houthis, who control much of western Yemen, including the nation's capital, claimed responsibility for launching missiles at Saudi Arabia's capital of Riyadh. The Iran-allied Houthis are fighting a U.S.-backed, Saudi-led military coalition that supports the government of Yemen's exiled president. A gun and machete attack in the East African nation of Burundi has left 26 people dead and 7 others wounded. The attack happened late last night in a small village and comes less than a week before a scheduled referendum on a constitutional amendment that would extend presidential terms from 5 to 7 years. Officials are not ruling out voter intimidation in last night's assault. When Burundi's President Pierre Nkurunziza ran for a third term in 2015, his victory was met with violent opposition. A yes vote would allow Nkurunziza to run for 2 more consecutive terms, possibly extending his rule to the year 2034. And a reminder to join us on PBS NewsHour Weekend Sunday for part 2 of Megan Thompson's report from Indiana on incarcerated parents and their children. Tomorrow, mentoring the kids left behind when parents go to prison.
Josh, he works, he goes to school. That is being the influence that he needs.
Would it make you feel better if I told you I had to do homework on spring break too?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all for this edition of PBS NewsHour Weekend. I'm Hari Srinivasan. Thanks for watching. Have a good night.